In this episode, what if I told you the fastest growing market for artificial intelligence adoption in the workplace is not London, New York, San Francisco, Shanghai, or Mumbai? What if I told you it is Africa? Yes, let us sink in for a second, because that's exactly what it is. That's what is happening now. A groundbreaking survey conducted by PricewaterhouseCoopers, the global consulting firm, reveals that 64% of African workers have integrated AI tools into their workflows over the past 12 months, substantially outpacing the rest of the world, which averages at 54%. This represents a heavy structural shift in how the future of work is being planned. And frankly, this is creating enormous opportunities as well as critical vulnerabilities that investors need to understand. So in this video, we are going to dive deep into what this AI adoption surge means for African economies, which sectors would stand to benefit the most, where the real risks are, and how forward-thinking investors like yourself can position yourself to benefit from what I call the most underestimated and potent technology transition happening in the world today. All right, so let's jump right into it. So in a nutshell, according to the report, Africa is substantially outpacing global averages. And you don't need any magician to tell you that this piece, Africa is the fastest growing market in terms of AI adoption. And as we said, 64% adoption compared to the rest of the world, which is 54% adoption, right? So that's a delta of 10%. 10 percentage point adoption is a massive gap. All right. So let's look at, to really understand what is going on, let's look at the technological timeline or landscape when it comes to Africa. So prior to 2020, almost the entire technology stack of Africa was consumed from other markets. So other markets will make their technology products and Africans will just buy them. Technology was not very fast evolving though, but something happened between 2015 and 2020 when Africa began to leapfrog the rest of the world in telephony or telephones, skipping landlines for mobile phones, skipping using credit cards and things like that for payment to use mobile phones for payments, using things like M-Pesa and MTN mobile money and the likes. So Africa began to leapfrog other developed or advanced economies in these two areas. Then fast forward, the pandemic hit from 2020, 2021. Pandemic hit, everyone was locked in shutdown. Most companies did not have any kind of technology backbone or background. So when COVID hit, they had to evolve. So that's when African companies en masse began to adopt software as a service tools, SaaS tools like QuickBooks, Zoom, Salesforce, HubSpot, and a whole lot, Zoho CRM, many SaaS products African businesses began to adopt because they couldn't afford to, because everyone was shut down. Before then, there was nothing like work from home in Africa. Everyone had to go to the workplace and every work was 90% manual, right? Fast forward, that COVID time, basically it's estimated that COVID time accelerated digitalization by roughly 5 years. If there was any blessing in regards to the pandemic, this is one of those blessings that happened with Africa. So not only did they end up with SaaS products, but also most African companies or organizations began to use cloud infrastructure like AWS, Google Cloud, Amazon Azure, and many other cloud platforms, cloud infrastructure. And with that said, they didn't have any legacy debt, and I'm going to explain what legacy debt means in a moment. Fast forward up to this new era of AI and agentic AI, right? So that is the quick spectrum. And just so that we understand what is going on. So in terms of demographics, and this is one of those like, wow, this is amazing. In terms of demographic, the PwC report found that 75% That is 3 out of 4. 75% of all African workforce fall under the age of 43 years. So 75% of the workforce is under 43 years, a very, very young workforce. And if you want to slice it further, 29% of the workforce is Gen Z, and then 44% are millennials. These are what we call digitally native demographic or digitally native workforce. What that means is that these people were born in an era where they were born into an era where digital tools like Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, sending texts, sending emails, sending photos, editing photos, all those kind of things was second nature to them because they were born into it. Compare that to a more matured workforce, like let's say more mature workforce like Western Europe and Japan, in places like that where the workforce is on average, they are older. They were not born into digital tools. They had to upskill to learn how to send emails, to learn how to attach things, to learn how to edit videos, to learn how to do many things. For Africa, because of how young the demographics are, these are digitally native workforce. You give them a smartphone, they can do a whole lot of things with that. So let's bear that in mind. In terms of wanted to peel what really is the root cause, according to the report. What's the root cause of this fast AI adoption? And the root cause can be couched under 4 main broad headings. Before we dive into today's analysis, I want to share something very valuable with you. And that is, if you are finding this Africa Business Intelligence useful, you need to know about our newsletter that goes even deeper. We publish 2 specialized newsletters each week that delivers the market intelligence you can't find anywhere else. On Tuesdays, we send out AI Africa Weekly, your source for African AI investment and innovation intelligence. This covers everything from fintech funding rounds to AI implementations across the continent, plus global AI developments that impact African markets. Then on Thursdays, you will get our Markets and Investments newsletter, which is focused on infrastructure development, traditional sector investments, and business opportunities across African markets. So think infrastructure projects, private equity deals, and policy changes that create real business opportunities. Both newsletters are completely free, and they are read by investors, corporate executives, and business leaders across Africa and internationally. You can sign up for both newsletters by using the link in the description below, right below. Now let's get right back into our video, into our analysis. The first one is accelerated digitalization post-pandemic. I think we've already spoken briefly about that in the previous slides. What we talked about is that during the COVID era, African businesses were forced to digitalize. And in so doing, it accelerated the pace of digitalization by 5 years just within that window. So that was a contributing factor to fast AI adoption. So accelerated digitalization. Number 2 is infrastructure leapfrog. This is a very, very, very important point, right? So let's think about this way. Most European and North American or developed economies, companies within that enclave, let's say big global banks, like let's say big organizations like maybe Ford Motor Company, Johnson and Johnson, Bank of America, TD Ameritrade, these kind of big global brands of Coca-Cola and the rest. What happened is that they have always used technology. Talk about a company like, let's say, General Motors or General Electric. They've been around for over 100 years. They invest in technology all the time. And most technologies that they invested into are, I would say, legacy systems or big ERP systems, enterprise platforms that they use to manage their entire business. Massive. And typically, those are like IBM, they are supplied by typically Cisco, IBM, Dell, HP, companies of that, AMD, and all those kind of big companies that supplies those things. And they are placed in big servers or big computer rooms, right? Huge. And those servers are placed locally on the premises of the organization. Typically, you find them maybe on the first floor or the second floor at most, where they are running all the time, 24/7, locally. So there are servers that are local. They are placed there locally. And some of these have been there for like 20 years, 30 years. On top of that, these companies, these tech companies are very smart. They sign very long-term contracts with these big organizations. And what happens is that when new technology evolves or new things arrive, like we have AI, we have cloud computing, we have SaaS and those things, sometimes new technology is not able to talk to these existing legacy infrastructure or legacy systems. They're not able to easily talk to it. If they would talk to it, then the parent company or the company that manufactured them would have to come and manually do an integration. So it's a big pain in the backside to bring new technology into old legacy systems. So what is an Achilles heel for these organizations is that typically big legacy systems then become a disadvantage because they can't move very fast with newer and latest technology. In Africa, most businesses don't have nothing. It's just like it happened with transitioning from zero to mobile phone adoption, or zero credit card and debit card and things, and just using mobile payments. The same thing is happening in the area of digitalization, where most businesses are moving from zero. They have nothing, no infrastructure. And all of a sudden, because there's a need for them to digitalize, they are now going straight into cloud computing, software as a service, infrastructure. And those ones, they are not locked into long-term contracts, decade-long contracts. No, these are like they pay subscription, like, they pay maximum is annual subscription or monthly subscription. They sign up, that's it. So there is no legacy deficit when it comes to Africa. So that means that in Africa, most businesses have the nimbleness to move very fast to adopt new technology. So that's one contributing factor. The next one is margin pressures. Margin pressures very important in this discussion. And this is what it means. Because yes, there's infrastructure gap when it comes to Africa is real. Is real. Things that businesses in the developed world take for granted are huge things in Africa. Let me give you a case in point example. So you set up your business in Nigeria, like Nigeria. I'm using Nigeria as a case study because they have this serious chronic issue with power outages. So their electricity, their national grid is not able to supply electricity for the entire population. So power is rationed very badly. So what happens is that you say you set up a manufacturing plant to make any widget. And if you set up shop in Europe, you don't even need to think about power because that is already baked into the system. You do that in North America, it's the same. You don't even need to think about it. It's like second nature. But if you're going to do that in Nigeria, you have to think about having your own diesel powered generator that can power the entire plant because you can't rely on the national grid. So infrastructure gap puts pressure on margins or profits because you have to take care of that. And that is just one thing. There are a plethora of other infrastructure-driven disadvantages when you do business. That is there, right? And on top of that, there's also the issue with rapidly changing regulations or compliance regulations, rapidly changing in Africa. Some of them, I would say some of them are legit. Others are just complete farce. But it is what it is. I think I met somebody who worked in a government agency in an African country some time back. And this person was so proud to tell me about their country being number 2 in the world when it comes to regulation in a certain particular sector. And they were so proud. We went for a conference in Washington, D.C., and we got to know that our country is ranked number 2 when it comes to tightening the belt in this industry. To me, I looked at the person and said, this is absolutely nuts. The country that was number 1 is already established, developed country, has built their systems. They have things, they have structures and things that work. They have systems that really support businesses and support their own people. They have innovated hundreds of years before, and you haven't even started innovation, and yet you are screwing and tightening the belt on your own little tiny economy. There's no sense in that. But then, the more I peel the onion, I realize that for most African economies or countries, all these kind of crazy regulations and things, I would say yes, some of them are needed, but a lot of them are not needed. The part of the motivation for some of the fast changing regulations and things is so that the government agencies can bring in internally generated funds. Most of the time, it's not about what the market needs or what their citizens need. It's about that government agency that needs to raise internal funds, because most of the time the funding that is coming from the central government is not enough to run the agency. So the agency will now come up with all some kind of ridiculous rules and things and police them and say you have to pay renewal fee, you have to do this, you have to do that, just so they will make money. And that is sad, really sad. But with that said, that puts pressure on margins and the need for organizations or businesses to keep tab with those kind of regulatory hurdles. So it puts pressure. So this here in comes why AI adoption is important. So most African businesses will embrace anything, any technology that would accelerate or will perfect, what do you call it, efficiency, that will improve efficiency. I think that's the right word. Anything that will come in to improve efficiency or bring in productivity gains. And those productivity or efficiency gains have a direct link to profitability or margins. African businesses will jump at it because they are all, you have to look for ways by which you will stay, your margins would improve, because many things are against you, but many other things too are in your favor. And if AI adoption, for instance, AI adoption means that you are able to make 50 sales calls in the day, or your sales team is able to make 50 sales calls in the day instead of 6, it will be welcome. If AI adoption means that you're able to analyze your sales data very, very, very fast and send dashboard reports to management for them to make quick decisions, that is going to help the bottom line. So that is going to be embraced. So margin pressures, massive, massive, massive thing. It's not so much with the other parts of the world, but in Africa, it's very, very prevalent. Then the last but not the least is managerial engagement. Managerial engagement is in Africa, managers are in favor of AI adoption in the workplace compared to the rest of the world. And the study found that managerial support compared to global peers, the survey found that Africans demonstrated 6 percentage points higher than the global average. That means that managers support AI adoption in the workplace in Africa more than anywhere else in the world, which is a great thing. Then the next one, which is crazy, but crazy good, is that when it comes to workforce upscaling or seeking to upskill, we realize that in Africa, Africans have a propensity to upskill on a scale of 15 percentage points more than their global peers. They are self-motivated. They want to learn about AI. Most people, Europe or whatever it is, okay, this is not a big deal, whatever it is. Africans are taking the bull by the horn and say, look, I want, even if I have to use my own money to upscale, I'll do that. And the delta between their enthusiasm and the rest of the world is 15 percentage points. So everything I've said up to this point is great, isn't it? Nice, 64% adoption rate and everything. When you look at it from the bird's eye view, from top bottom, it looks awesome. But when you come to ground level, the numbers look a bit shaky. So yes, we are happy about this 64% percentage point AI adoption. But when you peel the onion, you realize that there is another number that is not very, very good. The number is when the survey asks how many of the workforce uses AI tools on a daily basis, only 17% use AI tools on a daily basis. Only 17%. What that literally means is that for the 64%, most of them are doing what we call exploratory AI, using generative AI. Basically, that's it. They are not doing mission critical integrations. They are not, because integration will force daily usage. If you use generative AI, maybe you use it to just generate a report or analyze some data for you or something like that. But if it's integrated into a workflow, particularly, let's say, a workflow automation or agentic AI, then you will be forced to use AI on a daily basis. So let me give an example. Example is, let's say you receive invoices, your business receive invoices from vendors. And those invoices have to go through processes upon processes upon processes until they get paid, right? Now, fast forward, AI era. Then you implement, let's say in the past, the invoices come through, they sit on a desk, somebody will have to pick them up, manually enter them into, let's say, a spreadsheet, or manually enter them into maybe an accounting software. And they need to probably, somebody needs to minute or approve the invoice manually. And then that thing that is captured is now sent to finance, and finance will have their own entire different workflow until the invoice is paid another 30 days time. Okay. It could be applied to any other. It could be accounts receivable, whatever it is. Now, assuming there's an automation workflow whereby the moment the invoice is received, it probably gets scanned right there and then. The moment it gets scanned, there's an automation that will go and download the scanned document and save it to a folder, read everything on the invoice, read everything, and then automatically fill out the accounting system, populate the accounting system with the details of the invoice. And from there, automatically gets to accounts payable for them to pay. So something that would have taken 30 days takes, let's say, 2.5 days, 3 days for it to be done. If that was done, that is full integration. So the employees would say they use AI on a daily basis because it's fully automated end to end. So so when you look at those who are testing the waters, these are early adopters or water testing, the 64%. These are real users. So when you look at it, there's a big gap between this. Those who are using it for testing and those who are using it for mission critical integration, automated workflows, or agentic AI. Where to Africa, business landscape is in the exploration phase. That's where we are as a continent. We haven't gone into full integration phase. Now let's look at where AI is being deployed. So the places that today AI is being deployed, according to that, the PwC survey, is 36% of all those surveyed in Africa indicated that they use AI for data analytics. And I'm very happy about this. And there's a reason why I'm super, super happy about this. Prior to AI or generative AI coming to the scene, this area was one of the biggest Achilles heels when it comes to skills within the continent of Africa. Most employees struggled with this area, data analytics. You wouldn't believe it. And this is an area I've had so much experience, so much exposure to. You hire somebody to come and work in an organization, you give them spreadsheet to analyze maybe purchase data, sales data, or any data, call volume data. Most people struggle in Africa or struggled. It was a major thing, right? So talking about tools like advanced Excel, advanced Google Sheets, like big time, like pivot tables and lookups and all those kind of things, if statements, nested if statements, you will struggle to find people who can do it well. There are people, but there are people who can do, but you are looking for a needle in a haystack, basically. Come to even think about like big analytics platforms like Microsoft Power BI, or the killer one, which one's that? Tableau, right? That does massive, it can analyze data, visualize them, and that kind of thing. That skill set was lacking on the continent. Now AI has turned that upside down, because all you need to do is inject your data in whether ChatGPT or Anthropic, that's Claude, or even Google Gemini, and you will come up with amazing dashboards, and that will be able to give management key or timely dashboards for effective decision making. So I'm not surprised at all that most businesses are using it for data analytics, and I'm very, very excited. The next is e-learning at 34%, that is using generative AI to learn a skill or to learn something, which is great. Then chatbot, I think predominantly for customer support knowledge bases. So that's 23%. Then the fourth one is decision support at 13%. That is helping coming up with things to help with decision making or helping management decision. And finally, agnostic tools and using it for diagnostics. So these are the big areas that currently these African businesses are using foundational AI. These are foundational, basic generative AI use cases that are going on. All right. Now let's look at the sentiments. The report indicated that 76% of all those surveyed believed that AI improved their work quality. It is true, because what you are having is that you are having basically a PhD level skill that doesn't go on break, that never gets tired. And when it's set up properly, particularly doing things like data analytics and things, it will get the answer 100% out of 10 times all the time when it is properly set up. Right. So it really improves the quality of work. It accelerates the flow of work also. Right? So that is that. We've already looked at the higher upskilling rate versus global PSB 15%. So that's the sentiment. The kicker was when they were asked whether their skill will be relevant in 3 years' time. Only 35% of those surveyed indicated that they were confident that their skill will be relevant even in 3 years' time. That shows an existential anxiety. And I'm thinking this is possibly the major reason for the rush to upskill. I think this existential anxiety is what is fueling this upskilling drive in Africa. So basically, you are looking at almost 7 out of 10 African workers thinking that their skill set they've even acquired today will not be relevant in 3 years' time. That is very, very notable. Basically, we are going to be talking about opportunities and the gaps, some of the gaps that can be found in what this survey represents. But even before we do that, let me just share my personal thought here. So we are looking at a workforce that is young, a workforce that is digitally native, a workforce that has a high propensity to upskill in the area of AI adoption and digitization. This is like triple whammy. It's basically it's like you have fire and you are pouring more gasoline on the fire. So I want you to look at it from the point of view of opportunities that can be made with a workforce like that. Very young workforce, digitally native, high propensity for upscaling. Is a deadly combination and a good one at that. Very, very good one at that. With that comes certain strategic things that needs to change. I believe with this workforce for government, I believe governments need to come up with policies that do not stifle creativity and innovation, because young people typically tend to be very heavy risk takers and innovators. So in a bit government designing rules and regulations, I believe African governments should not fall into the trap to over-regulate, because I also think that sometimes to our development partners or governments in maybe European Union or anywhere it is, developed nations, sometimes force these or coerce African countries to come up with all sorts of regulations that they know is going to be detrimental to them. Maybe, quote unquote, could I say, is an anti-competitive measure that we are not aware of. That they will encourage you, give you big grants to regulate sectors of your economy. And what it's going to do is that it's just going to stifle innovation in your own backyard. So our governments must look at this very carefully, because of the potential advantage that we have. The workforce is Africa's major asset. And with upscaling and this kind of workforce, the next phase is opening up innovation corridors so that new things, new businesses, new concepts can flood the continent. Number 2, I believe both private sector investors and business community and government. But a government typically doesn't have enough money moving around. Most of them can't even balance their budgets. So I wouldn't say too much of that, but I'm looking at potential like institutional investors, impact investors in this area, impact investors looking to make an impact I believe one of the key areas that impact investment can play a key role is in the area of access to cheap internet in Africa. Particularly, I believe, because of what I just enumerated, every college campus, every university campus in Africa must have access to free, ultra fast internet. Free. That is not really throwing money away or doing charity. That is actually a huge investment, because when you empower young people who have a desire to upskill, who are digitally native, and you give them the tools to be able to do what they can do best, that is a powerful form of investment. You're investing in your own. If governments can do that, or can partner, or can encourage impact investors or development partners to come in and help do that, make internet maybe rock bottom cheap or free, particularly on every college campus. If possible, every high school as well. I believe high schools should also have free access to free ultra fast internet. That must be a must. And then finally, there must be development partners, whatever it is, to help set up public libraries. And these public libraries must have access to free ultra fast internet. I don't see a lot of public libraries around in Africa, which is surprising. But I'm throwing these ideas out there for particularly impact investors to take a look at that. Setting up, I believe, every district, or the equivalence of it, every district in any locality on African, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, must have a local public library that has access to free internet. And then every school must have access to free internet. That is a must. Now, let's look at what the big opportunities are for three classes of investment vehicles. So the first investment vehicle, venture capital. So let's look at what advantage VCs could take with this based on this survey. One of the things that I've seen arguments for Africa setting up their own large language models. What that means is Africa creating their own ChatGPT, creating their own Cloud or Perplexity or Gemini or whatever it is, creating their own. Yes, it's something that if could be done, yes, it's pride, we've done something. But I don't think it's needed. And I would argue against it. This is my reason. Yes, if you want to do it for the sake of ego and pride, big ups to you. But for practical purposes, the first thing is that to set up a large language model, you need to procure the chips, the AI chips that can be used to train your own large language model. And those chips are not cheap. These are very expensive chips. And they are even very difficult to get your hands on. As China, the biggest company that makes chips is NVIDIA, a US-based company. And most companies cannot get their hands on NVIDIA chips. And I think one GPU chip is over $100,000. And you need thousands of them to come up with any kind of reasonable large language model. So, and then number two, setting up these large language models you need these kind of massive processing centers, like big massive data centers that will house these chips and house these big machines. And those kind of things drink electricity. I don't say consume. These guys, they actually eat electricity like crazy. I gave an example of Nigeria that currently they are struggling to provide power to their citizens. And then you are going to add AI inferencing and training and all those big machine centers for AI model training in Nigeria. That will collapse their grid. They don't have that. So it requires so much electricity that Africa doesn't have it. So the best thing is to build on top of existing LLMs. And also, frankly, Europe has an LLM called Mistral. Nobody even uses it. I mean, their market share is a tiny thing. Most Europeans use ChatGPT, Cloud, or the others, Gemini, and the rest. Only a few people use it. So the real opportunity is basically building platforms or deploying platforms on top of existing LLMs and building products on top of that have African context or African relevance. To me, that's the quickest way. And then when we become prosperous, we can at some point decide to come up with our own LLM and what have you. So the real play when it comes to VC play is in the area of localized SaaS, investing in businesses that are building on top of AI. So you're building on top, and they have relevance to the African market, maybe healthcare angle when it comes to Africa, maybe agriculture or education angle when it comes to Africa, and the likes, right? Then the next one is data infrastructure. As more and more people begin to use advanced AI, agentic AI, automation workflows and things, there's more need for data infrastructure, and also to make things work faster, to prevent latency. That is things taking longer to process. There's need for more data infrastructure like data centers and stuff. So that is an opportunity for VC firms. Then as more people adopt AI, there's always going to be the need for security solutions, cloud, cyber security solutions. That's an area VCs can look into. Then my favorite area, enterprise AI agents. Enterprise AI agents, where companies build enterprise agents for big scale businesses in Africa. Then finally, workflow automation tools. When Africa begin to create their own workflow automation tools, like maybe building their own Zapier, N8N, Make.com, Gunloop, and the rest. So these are potential opportunities on the continent as well, right? Then when it comes to the corporate sector, I will count them into risks and opportunities. The risk with the corporate sector, as you saw, is that most employees are self-educating. They are using their own salaries for a large part to upskill. That is good and not good for you. The reason is this: when the workforce begin to upskill and the organization's workflow and job architectures has not aligned with their skills. So let's say employee A has learned all these AI tools and they are very proficient in AI. They know automation, they know agentic AI, they know all these things at the back of their mind. And in their workplace very manual and mundane. And what's going to happen is that your competitors are going to poach your AI trained staff away. That's the risk you run until you begin to deploy or adopt AI at a faster rate. And I don't mean generative, I mean integration. Until you're able to start looking at use cases for your business and adopt AI, so that your skilled employees who have trained in that area can have an aligned job to do, an aligned work to do, right? So that's the risk. Your good talent will be poached. I guarantee you. Then the other side is the opportunity. The opportunity is if you adopt AI and you begin to pluck low-hanging fruits, first mover integrations like chatbots and all those kind of things, you're able to do that. You're able to accelerate maybe your sales development pipeline using AI, accelerate content creation using AI and the rest, and many others. And you do that consistently. What's going to happen is that you're going to knock your competition off the ground. You're going to knock them off the park. Just give yourself like 24 to 36 months. You will be the leader in the industry if you do that. So that is it for you. Then for institutional investors, large scale private and private equity players, the goal here is emerging market. Your goal here is emerging market competitiveness story. Because as you look at it, AI to me is a leveler. You may have the biggest company in anywhere else, but if another company in another country is deploying AI at a very faster rate than you, it's a leveler. It levels the playing field. So that results in productivity gains, and those productivity gains will equate to margin expansion. And that is what large institutional investors are looking at. And particularly in these areas, I'm looking at these three sectors, there are other sectors, but these sectors stand to benefit the most from faster AI adoption. One is telecoms, particularly in the area of network optimization. And then the other one is financial services, particularly banking, in the area of risk assessment, fraud detection systems using AI. It's a huge thing. Then manufacturing, particularly when it comes to optimizing manufacturing processes like predicting when machine parts needs to be replaced so that they don't really break down before you now stop production and go and fix them and then come back. So those are the areas that I know there are opportunities in the area of agriculture, education, healthcare, and the like. But I believe that these three sectors are going to be the big, massive areas to look out for. All right, if you love content like that, I want you to subscribe and do all the YouTube stuff. But most importantly, I want you to subscribe to our weekly newsletters, the Africa AI newsletter on Tuesdays, and then the Thursday newsletter on market intelligence. These are all free, and these are amazing newsletters that I think if you jump on, you see all these kind of things, because all our content is created typically out of our newsletter. We pick some of the best stories that resonates the most with our audience, and then I talk about them. So it will be a great thing to look at. And then also, I'll be glad to know if you or your workplace adopted AI. I would want you to put in a comment and tell us which areas you are deploying AI. I think it would be great for people to learn about use cases and how AI is being deployed in your African business setting. All right, peace, thanks, and see you. Watch my next video.